This is Off Track. Hello and welcome to Off Track with Hinch and Rossi. It is a Tuesday show that both of us showed up to, a rare and amazing thing. And it's because last week we teased we were going to have Dale Coyne on the show. Couldn't get Dale, so we got the next best thing, which is the sole...
Dale's wife.
The sole announced full-time driver for DCR so far for 2025 NTT IndyCar Series, Mr. Jacob Abel is joining us today. Hello, Jacob.
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me on. I'm happy to be here. I'm a listener of the show, just pleased to be here.
First guest that's been a listener.
Yeah, for sure, without a doubt. So I'm just going to ask the hard question first. Announced Dale Coyne driver in January. Like that's a pretty big deal.
Dude, it was tough. To be honest, it was tough. But the biggest thing that was able to get that done is we had media day, and we just used that as we need to get everything done by then. And Dale was saying, it's like, for whatever reason, he just really wants to be done by this media day. I'm like, no, it's like, I could honestly kind of care less about the media day, but if it wasn't the media day, then the next best deadline is St. Pete. And I'd like to at least have some sort of idea what's going on. Because, you guys know how it is. It's very, very hard to prepare for something when it's not all set in stone. It's not all done. I couldn't be talking to the engineers and all of that. And it's like, you're kind of training and doing everything without a purpose. So to at least have it done with a month and a half, 2 months to spare is super comforting, but still something that's, super late compared to everything that I've done the rest of my career.
I was going to say, I love that sounded like it was tough for Coyne to be like, well, I got to have this done by media day.
Right.
Well, we've talked about on the show, like how like legit this year's media day was. So, it's a win-win for everyone. You may have had a little bit of like, not ulterior motives, but you had your own deadline of like, okay, I want to get it done by media day, but like, that's going to be a good thing for everyone. We all saw what Fox did. We saw the production that went into that day. So the fact that you're there, right? It's going to be very important versus whoever your teammate ends up being. They're going to have to like Photoshop or do some sort of edit to include them in driver intros and the program of that sort. So it's awesome that you were able to get it done.
And if you know who your teammate's going to be, you can make some news here today.
No, but I've gotten that asked a billion times, but yes.
Yeah, I can only imagine. But dude, it's also like the bumpers going to break, right? Where you're in the cool backlit room and you do the arms cross or whatever. So when inevitably you're leading a race this year as we go to break, right, we can cut to the actual, not just like a static shot of you in a blank race suit going, 2 thumbs up.
Right. So, exactly.
Right. It's key that you're there. I want to take a step back real quick though. First of all, do you go by Jacob? Is it Jake? Do you care what people call you?
Yeah, Jacob.
Jacob. Okay,
Jacob's
so
fine. I don't care.
So this is the thing. There's a lot of IndyCar fans that might not follow Indy Next too closely. So you're a new face to the viewers, to the listeners. We want to give them a little bit of backstory. This is Jacob. Don't call me Jake Abel. Successful road to Indy career. So why don't you just kind of start from the beginning? What got you into racing, and just kind of walk through your path a little bit that got you up to this point?
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Jim. There we go. No, but I had a relatively late start to the game, which is always weird to say. And it's always weird when I'm telling people this, because I started racing when I was like 12 years old instead of when I was, 5 years old. But it's always just kind of been a really fast tracked path ever since then. My first race was, weirdly enough, a dirt oval go-kart race in Clark County Fairgrounds, Indiana. We're a long way from there right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Man, who hasn't spent just hours around that place?
Right, exactly. But no, we quickly switched into, the karting scene of the SCUSAs and the USPKS and WKA, all the, national karting races around the country. But my karting career was probably only 2 or 3 years long, where I actually did karting. And I did I did that dirt oval race. And then the next year we went out to Newcastle and started doing some some club races and stuff, but I think I did one club race, maybe two, before I just got thrown into kind of the national scene. So that's sort of been the story of my whole entire career. Is my karting career was short, and then jumping into F4 was a pretty quick step. But that's kind of where the inception of Able Motorsports started, is when I was in karting and trying to look into junior open wheel cars and going down that path. My dad sort of saw it as a way to start a business, instead of just, writing a check and seeing it disappear in the wind and you get a seat for a year. Actually, I need to go back a little bit. My dad, he grew up a motocross racer his whole entire young career. He did that at a pretty high level, won some amateur national championships at, the Daytona Supercross, some pretty big events. And he ended up getting hurt really bad later in life doing that. And so when I was growing up, he was racing vintage cars, and that is very much a do-it-yourself thing. And you always bring your own trailer and have your own people to run the show.
What was he racing? My dad raced vintage at one point. What was he driving?
He was doing SVRA. He had a 1968 Alfa Romeo, little sports car. And then he also had a Shelby Can-Am car. So it was kind of a spec series that they had like late in the 90s. So he had one of those as well. And then he actually raced USF 2000 in like two races, I think. Yeah, he did Lucas Oil and he did Indy. So obviously not vintage, but yeah, so once I kind of got out of karting, that was a bit more of the idea, was to develop this Able Motorsports. And it's kind of come a long way since our one car F4 team in 2017. We did the Indy 500 in 2023 and have been a successful race winning Indy Next team, for the past year or so now. And it's going to stay like that, even though I'm now gone, which is really a cool thing. But yeah, that was sort of it. It's just kind of moving up step by step. I'm a true product of the American open wheel ladder, of just kind of chipping away, doing my time, not necessarily over rushing things. I spent time in the ladder with guys like Oliver Askew and Kyle Kirkwood, who won at every single level right away, immediately. But those guys were super proven go-kart racers who had been doing it since they were 5 years old and winning since they were 6. So it's like those guys, when they came in, they were super ready to go and fast-track their way up. Whereas me, I was sort of moving my way up slowly and kind of paying my dues a little bit, to the point where last year was my third season then in Indy Next. And, it was our first proper like championship run at it. We had a good season. It started out a little bit better than it was in the middle and ultimately ended, but it was a big step for the team and a big step for me personally. And that's kind of led us to everything with Dale Coyne and everything for next year, or this year, I guess now.
It just goes to show that like motorsports is such a unique sport / business in the sense that, there's no one way to get there, right? There's so many different avenues. There's so many different paths. There's not one set timeline. There's not, if you're able to continually improve and develop and build relationships and kind of keep your face there, you're going to get an opportunity, right? Like it's hard to stay in the game that long, just because we all know how expensive the sport is and all of the things that go into it away from driving the race car. But it sounds like what you and your family did is you took an approach that, maximized everyone's strengths, whether it was your dad's history in the sport or whether it was your development through the ladder series. And you're now one of 22, is it 24, 27? I don't know. There's a lot of
27. How do you not know how many cars are on the grid, bro?
Because it changes all the time. I don't know. So 27 IndyCar drivers, which is awesome, man. So a huge congrats.
26. So they don't know who his teammate is yet. Fair. But in theory, 27.
TBD. TBD. Yeah. So okay. So you made it to IndyCar. You're here. Now what? Like, what are you trying to accomplish in year one? Have you driven the car yet? Like, what have you done so far?
Yeah. So I just came off of a test about 2 weeks ago. It was my first test, or I guess it was last week now. It was my first test as an IndyCar driver. I'd done
was that the first time you'd driven a car, the IndyCar, or no?
No. Okay. So at the end of 2023, I tested with Dale at Sebring, and that went really well, as tests go. And, we were out there with other cars with experience, and it went well. But I think with that, we always knew I was going to come back and do Indy next for a third year, because I felt like I did need to prove myself. I did need to go out, win races, compete for the championship, because I did want to be ready when I made that step and feel like I belonged when I was there. So that test was kind of just to dip my toe in the water a bit. We were off the heels of a pretty good sophomore season in Indy Next with some podiums and poles and all that. And then we did the season, and then my second test was at the end of 24 with Ganassi, actually, just through our relationship, we developed throughout the past few years. They had a need for a driver, very specific Indy Next driver who had oval experience, and I was able to fill that need for them, and that was at Texas. And then my last test was then at Thermal. So yeah, I've had 3 days in the car, kind of spread out over the course of like 14 months, but so it wasn't my first day in the IndyCar, but it was my first day as an IndyCar driver.
It was your first day in the hybrid.
The Texas test was the first day in the hybrid.
Got it.
That was a super cool test. Obviously, we don't race there a lot anymore, at all anymore. But it was, a nuts track, very, very ballsy and sketchy. And we were on the Indy tire, so it wasn't necessarily even flat. And we were kind of sliding around everywhere. But yeah, it was still a really cool experience.
What's it been like? What's it been like dealing with Dale? I feel like Dale is this kind of like mythical creature in the paddock. Like we hear from Roger Penske all the time. We hear from Chip Ganassi and Michael Andretti and whatever. And Dale, I feel like, doesn't get as much coverage as he should, and is sort of this, like, he's not aloof. Like, you can find him, like, if you need to talk to him, but it's we definitely don't get as much airtime with Dale as I think the series deserves, because he's a heck of a character, and we've talked about it on the show before. I don't know, Jacob, how much you know about the history of Dale Coyne Racing and what an absolute stud Dale is, that for, I don't know, 30 whatever years now, he's kept cars consistently on the grid. Such an impressive dude in so many ways. But we've heard some funny stories from guys that have raced for him that it can be an interesting experience kind of dealing with him, especially on like the business side of it and getting deals done.
It's funny you say that, because as our deal was kind of coming together, I literally did the most basic thing and YouTubed, like, who is Dale Coyne? And I found the most basic video of running through their history and all of that. And it is cool. It gave me a lot of confidence, because they have won, a handful of races in IndyCar, and they've been on podiums like very, very recently. And the amount of drivers that go through there is, we all know it, is pretty crazy. You look just in recent history, David Malukas is probably his most recent product, and now he's, a Penske driver, or is he? None of us know, but he's
Penske adjacent.
Nice.
Right. He's got his opportunities, which is awesome. Super happy for him. He's a good kid. But also Alex Palou, one of the greatest IndyCar drivers of all time, I think, already. And it's only however many years he's been in here. And Romain Grosjean, people like that. But yeah, on Dale personally, I don't have too many stories yet. He is a very, like you said, ominous person, sort of, but he's also extremely opinionated. He's very connected with everything. He's in all of the meetings, even though they might not be public. And he seems to have like very, very out there opinions. It's cool. I think he's a good guy to work with, and he's prides himself in fostering young drivers and young people too. I think you look at some of the engineers who have gone through his program in the past 5 years. I think you look through the whole entire IndyCar paddock, and so many people have been in that organization at some point in the other. And I think it's cool. He kind of has a bit of a knack for finding those people, whether it's drivers or mechanics or engineers or whatever it may be.
Does he get frustrated? Have you heard? You don't know him.
Question.
You haven't been around him that long yet, but like, has he expressed annoyance with the fact that like all of these, some of these really great engineers, mechanics, drivers come through his doors and then exit through the same door not too many years after? Or does he kind of realize that's his space, and he just looks for the next and best next thing?
Yeah, I don't really know. I'd probably be pretty frustrated if it were me. But But I think he does get it, and I think he takes a little bit of pride in seeing the guys like Alex Blow leave his organization and go win 3 championships. Like it's crazy because maybe he wasn't able to do that at Dale Coyne Racing, but Dale, I think, still feels like he's a part of that success when he sees stuff like that happen.
As he should, right? And then the other side of Dale is he's always been good at finding young talent, but the other thing is he's got a knack for is kind of giving established guys a second chance. You know, you think back to Cristiano D'Amata in the early 2000s, you think to Sebastian Bourdais, Justin Wilson, you know, who won him his first race as a team owner. These were established guys that hit some rocky patch or, you know, the cruel, unfair world that sometimes is motorsports were left without a ride. And Dale swooped in and gave these guys a shot to win races again, which both Seb and Justin did for them, which is pretty incredible. You talked about your tests last week. That was at Thermal, right?
Yep.
So one of a handful of tracks, probably not too many tracks that you don't know going into your rookie season. How'd the test go?
Yeah, it went okay. I think, you know, you can look at the lap times and get super stressed out about that or whatever. I think for us personally, especially with the deal only coming together like a week and a half before, we didn't have a ton of time to prepare just as a whole entire group. You know, I went up there and spent as many days as I could in the shop before, but for us, it was really trying to just build that dialogue together, go through, you know, all of the little things. I think it was so different than the tests I've done in the past because it's like, okay, now you're an IndyCar driver. Now we need to prepare for the season. Right. It's not just go out and try a couple of these changes, give us a little bit of feedback. It was, we really need to start working on hitting the box, in laps, out laps, you know, tire management, all of that stuff.
Fuel save.
Throw it in. Yeah, exactly. And you throw all that in with a track. Honestly, like you said, one of the only tracks that I don't know, it made it a little bit difficult, but I'm still, you know, fairly confident that we'll be able to get up to speed come the race weekend and all of that. And I think we accomplished a lot of our goals that we needed to accomplish.
When you come up from next, you know, most next teams are kind of structured in a way that on your car you have like 2 kind of dedicated mechanics and then kind of 1 dedicated engineer. Maybe there's an assistant that helps out with all the cars or something like that. And then all of a sudden you're at an IndyCar team where you've got 3, 4, 5 engineers and you've got 8, 10, 12 mechanics. I mean, from the driver's seat, you know, I remember what that was like the first time when you're looking around at all these people like, these people are all here for me. I better not screw that up. Like, what's it like for you kind of making that transition and understanding the scope of what it takes to run an IndyCar compared to what you've been doing in Next?
Yeah, it's intense. You know, I had a little bit of an idea just through the past couple tests that I did, you know, the Ganassi test in particular. You know, obviously I'm a rookie and I don't have any experience with IndyCar teams or how they're supposed to work or how things are supposed to feel and all of that. But just that one day and the 3 weeks leading up to that to spend with that organization and having been there just for a little bit of time. But that test was very important to them. So they, you know, went all in with it and preparing and everything. And so just to get a little bit of that experience with that team almost makes me feel like more of an experienced IndyCar driver. It's like, okay, I know a little bit more of what it's supposed to look like, how things are supposed to flow and all of that. So it wasn't completely daunting. I think the biggest thing for this team in particular and the number 51 car in particular, it's like we, you know, spoke to it before. It's been a bit of a revolving door over at Dale Coyne Racing in terms of new people all the time. And Mitch Davis is now there and he's kind of been able to put his touch on things and bring in a lot of the people that he wants to bring in and stuff. So a lot of that is just getting everyone together and sort of on the same page. Because it's not like, you know, these other teams where it's been people that have been working with each other for the past, you know, 3 or 4 years, and then you just get delivered a new driver. It's sort of all of us, you know, learning each other together, which is, it's a cool experience. It reminds me a lot of Able Motorsports and of my time there, and kind of having to foster a little bit of that culture and bringing everyone together, sort of being that quarterback guy and, you know, working with everyone and trying to make sure everyone's getting along and everything. So I think that's something that I'll be able to pull from my whole entire year is that experience from Able and sort of being with a smaller team in the past and helping them, you know, move up.
So one question I have, we we've seen so many of the guys that come out Indy next, right, find immediate, not necessarily success, but are instantly quick.
Pace,
that car seems to translate really well in terms of the driving style to the IndyCar. Obviously, you've been on Firestone tires now. Like, do you find that it's pretty easy to transition? Obviously, it's a big organization. There's a lot more, as you just explained, things to think about and deal with. But just driving the car and getting the lap time out of it, do you think it's a pretty simple step from one to the other?
Yeah, honestly, I think it's full credit to IndyCar and to Firestone for developing a very good junior open wheel car to prepare you. I think it's a very good comparison. I think once you get out on the track and are trying to put together a good lap, that's the easy part, to be honest. And that's the part that's like very much comparable to the Indy Next car, especially now with the Firestone and kind of how you blend the brake pedal in and all of that. And everything is very similar. With the Cooper tire, the last one, it was a little bit more of a big step, but that was honestly because that tire was just so hard and so hard to drive. And it kind of kept the step pretty similar because it was just easier. It was getting onto the Firestone has made everything easier and more happy. I think the biggest place it compared was probably Texas and the oval. For whatever reason, it's just kind of how you feel the right rear tire and everything like that was probably the biggest comparison. But yeah, honestly, it's a relatively seamless transition, and the IndyCar just does everything better from top to bottom. I know it's an old car now, and you guys probably think that's weird to hear, but it feels really, really good coming from a guy like me who hasn't driven a top level open wheel car. That's nice to hear.
It feels like a piece of most of the time.
All the young kids have the advantage, man, because they didn't get to drive it when it was really cool.
Well, and honestly, it's like not even having driven it without the hybrid, because everyone's like, oh my gosh, like the car's been so heavy and it's changed everything. It's like, well, to me, it still feels pretty awesome because it's a lot more horsepower than I've used to, right? A lot more downforce, all that. So.
Yeah, drivers will always find something to complain about, Jacob. So
of course,
yeah, you'll get there. Yeah. Just give it a couple.
Give it 3 races. It's gonna be like, this car's a piece of man. I hate this.
Right, exactly.
Right.
All right, man. So we'll leave you with this. You're heading into your rookie season. What's a realistic goal? Like I know it's hard to set kind of numeric goals in this sport, but for you, what is going to be a result? And again, not numbers wise, but just what would you like to accomplish by the end of the season? That by Nashville, you're like, all right, 2025 was a good year. It's something we can build from.
I think the biggest thing, especially coming into this team who didn't have the success they wanted last year, and I'm obviously a rookie. I don't have a lot of expectations. It sounds cliche, but it's just kind of going out there and learning every weekend and trying to complete all the laps and not biting off more than we can chew. And just, focusing on progression instead of like outright results, I think is gonna be the biggest thing from St. Pete all the way to Nashville. That'll be the biggest goal. Obviously I think, as a driver, it's like, okay, I'd love to make one fast 12 or, be rookie of the year or something like that. But I don't want to get caught up trying to chase those goals and end up, lacking lap time or crashing the car trying to get, 12th instead of 14th or something like that. I think it's just keeping everything relative. And I think the goals are going to progress so much throughout the season, and they're going to be so dynamic. I mean, if we roll off and my teammate, whoever it is P5 in the first race, I think that's going to change my goals a lot throughout the year. I'm no longer going to be happy with 15th or whatever it is. So I think a lot of it's just being patient and, adapting to whatever it is and trying to extract the most out of it, whatever weekend it is and whatever the car I'm delivered and whatever the package we have is. I think if we have a P15 car, finishing P15, but God forbid we do have a really good car one weekend, it's like, okay, it's time to show up and get that result. So yeah, I'd say that's the biggest thing, is just trying to maximize whatever we have week in and week out, whatever it is.
Very cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on, buddy. Very excited for you. Congratulations. I know it's a cool thing. It's a cool experience for everybody listening. you want to follow this kid. He's a future star of the IndyCar series. Where can they find you? Like, what's your give everybody your socials and everything like that.
Yeah, it's just Jacob Abel Racing on everything. I'm trying to be better at social media, as we all are, just posting as much as we can.
It's the worst. It's so hard.
But it's on Jake Abel.
So not Jake Abel.
Right.
Jake Abel.
Got it. Yeah, right on.
All of my friends call me Jabel or Abel or something. Honestly, no one calls me Jacob, but if someone asks me, that's what I say.
Oh, that's fair, man.
I like Jabel. Jabel's cool. I like that.
It's been such a funny nickname.
You would
because
like it, Hinge.
It's everybody in my whole entire life has come up with that on their own. It's like first racing people figured it out, but then I went to college and they all adapted that on their own and figured it out on their own. Everyone's just seemingly figured it out on their own. I don't go around saying, "Oh, everyone calls me Jabel." But
yeah. Well, look, we're going to have you on kind of mid-season to see do your mid-season report card and see how you're enjoying first crack at the IndyCar series.
And I'm going to name this episode "Everyone Calls Him Jabel."
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, buddy. Thanks so much. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
This has been Off Track with Hinch and Rossi. Off Track is part of the SiriusXM Sports Podcast Network. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, please give a 5-star rating and leave a review. Subscribe today wherever you stream your podcasts. We are at Ask Off Track on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to follow us on Twitter, we're at Hinchtown and at Alexander Rossi. If you want to follow Tim, though we have no idea why you would, he's at the Tim Durham on Twitter. Find us on YouTube and subscribe to our channel for exclusive video content. Off Track is produced by Tim Durham, and by that we mean Tim.